have it.
I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to take part in this adjournment debate, and I thank Mr Speaker for granting it. As advised to the Speaker's office and with the Minister's agreement, my right honourable friend, the member for Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes, will take a few minutes of my time. To some extent, the points I will be making are similar to those in my Westminster Hall debate, which took place on the 11th of December. Before I turn to the specific issue of the closure of the Lindsey Oil Refinery in my constituency, I want to question the government's position regarding energy security. The loss of Lindsey Oil Refinery will reduce the UK to just 4 refineries. All of this makes us even more reliant on imports in a turbulent world situation, and as we know, world markets can result in supplies being disrupted. At a time when we have a very unpredictable American administration, we are becoming more and more reliant on American-owned businesses, and I question whether that is wise.
Well, my honourable friend Melanie.
I'll give way, yes.
I'm very grateful to my friend and neighbour for introducing this debate. And of course, as local members of Parliament, we must be primarily concerned about our constituents who have worked there. But is not the point he makes very powerful that we've just had this debate on Ukraine? In an increasingly dangerous world, the government really must look into its own heart as whether its policies on energy security are meeting national security.
Well, I thank my right honourable friend, the Father of the House, who makes a very important point and strengthens the argument that I was trying to make. The reality is we are exporting skilled jobs, and the government seem to find that acceptable. The Minister of State has previously stated that the market would adjust, as indeed it has. But it begs the question, if we say the same, if another refinery were to close, at what point will we recognise that we must retain some refining capacity in the UK, surely for strategic reasons, if no other? I give way to the honourable gentleman.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I would just like to, before I make my point, I would just like to thank the Honourable Member for Brigg and Immingham for firstly bringing this debate, but also for his Westminster Hall debate. We sit on opposite sides of the chamber, but I thoroughly respect how much he stood up for his constituents and the wider oil refining industry in the United Kingdom, and I thank him for that. I'm going to speak about Grangemouth and specifically the jobs that have been lost there.
Order. The honourable gentleman is not going to speak about Grangemouth. The topic of the adjournment debate is the Lindsey Oil Refinery, and interventions must be brief.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was under the impression it was on the wider UK refining sector. Anyway, I would just like to say on that note that we talk about just transition. It's often mentioned in this chamber, but with job losses and no future jobs available, that is the definition of a very unjust transition.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind words, and equally I recognise how he has stood up for his constituents over the Grangemouth issue, and I compliment him on that.
Further to that point?
I give way to the honourable gentleman.
Can I also thank the honourable member for Brigg and Immingham for bringing it forward? And he's right to refer to the Lindsey Oil Refinery, but it's all the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland that is affected by it, because we then become vulnerable, we rely on foreign entities. And does the honourable member further agree that for the nation's energy security and future energy provision, we need to right this wrong and invest in British-based refineries and energy provision, because everybody in this great United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland suffers as a result?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. No debate would be complete without such an intervention. And he's absolutely right that it is the United Kingdom's energy security that we are referring to. If I can turn now to the future of the Lindsey Refinery, which has been part of the local economy in my constituency for over 50 years. It's not just a tragedy for the immediate a tragedy for the immediate workforce, 124 of whom have already been made redundant. But for the area as a whole, the bars, the restaurants, the hotels, haulage firms, Humberside Airport, catering suppliers, the list goes on. North Lincolnshire Council receive around £2 million a year in business rates, which could steadily reduce over coming years. And needless to say, that would leave an enormous hole in their budget with the consequent impact on the local community. At last week's Energy Question Time, the Secretary of State, in reply to me, said the fault lay with the owners, Prax, and I agree that the directors do indeed bear responsibility. But it is my constituents who are feeling the consequences. The Minister of State has previously stated that the government are not in the business of saving failed businesses, even if it seems when they are vital national resource. On that point, yes, I'd happily give way.
Grateful to the honourable member for giving way. He's right that the UK government did say that they're not in the business of saving failing businesses, but they've washed their hands of some of the key contributing factors as to why these businesses are failing, such as the signalling they're doing about the North Sea in terms of new licences, but also that these refineries use vast amounts of energy, and in the UK they enjoy the highest industrial energy prices in the developed world. That's the government's responsibility.
I welcome the intervention from the honourable gentleman, and he's absolutely right that energy costs have played a major part, not only in the struggles that Lindsey Oil have had, but other particularly manufacturing businesses. And the comments from the government that they're not in the business of saving business, it seems to come rather strange from a Labour government in particular. Ministers have repeatedly said that there is a legal process and the insolvency practitioners must follow that. And of course I accept that. I have previously used the phrase that I feel the government are hiding behind the administrators. I say that because they have refused to consider the wider implications of the refinery closure, such as the local economy, the workforce and national energy security. I have asked on more than one occasion if the government would prefer a sale of the whole business that would allow the business to continue production and to resume production. Alarm bells rang for me when I received a letter from the Under Secretary of State following my Westminster Hall debate, and it said, the sales process must remain ongoing with the official receiver and special managers continuing to engage with all interested parties. However, they have confirmed that none of the credible, that's the important words, the credible offers received would enable a return to refining operations within the next few years or allow all employees to be retained. Note, Madam Deputy Speaker, that she refers to credible bids. So we have an acknowledgement that there were indeed credible bids and mentions the time frame. This contradicts the repeated statements from government that there were no credible bids. Either there were credible bids or there were not. Which is it, Minister? In fairness to the Minister of State, I think when the member for Great Grimsby and I met with him last week, he did at least acknowledge that the government would have preferred a sale of the business in its entirety.
Will the honourable member give way?
I give way to the honourable member.
So picking up this point, if there was a serious bid to buy the whole site, to invest in it, to keep it going, to maintain the jobs and to grow the jobs, surely in the interests of the local area, but also the strategic interest of Lincolnshire and the country, that should have been taken into account. And therefore, will he ask the Minister to ensure full transparency on this whole process so that we can establish whether or not there were credible alternative bids to keep Lindsey Oil Refinery going?
The honourable gentleman for that intervention, and he makes he supports the point I was making, that I got it in writing from the Under Secretary of State that there were credible bids. It is the issue of credible bids. It's one of the most important unanswered questions. Following last week's announcement about the sale of the assets to Phillips 66, who I should say at this point are an excellent local employer and provide hundreds of well-paid jobs. But I have corresponded or met with 4 consortia who wanted to buy the business in its entirety. When I spoke to the union representative yesterday, he said there were 7 such expressions of interest. But the 4 that I've been in contact with reference FTI, the agents, and they've reached the same conclusion, that they have been ignored and not allowed to put forward their case in sufficient detail for an informed judgment to be arrived at. The Minister will no doubt be aware of an email to the Prime Minister from James Ascot, who's acting on behalf of Axiom. In it, Mr Ascot states that the ministers have publicly stated that no bids were received for the full Lindsey Oil Refinery site that would safeguard the future of refining operations and protect jobs. This statement is factually false. Our company did submit a fully funded credible bid for the entire site on behalf of our client, expressly structured to preserve and continue operations, safeguard jobs, provide a full creditor liability solution, and a separate cash acquisition value at £400 million. He goes on to state this bid existed.
Yeah. Would you allow on that point?
I'll give way.
He's very generous. He is, though, setting out a seriously curious sequence of events if you relate it to the actions of a well-intentioned government relative to a vital industry. And is he concerned, as I am, that this is more about the beliefs of the Secretary of State rather than the industrial imperatives of these islands, and that the government, in pursuit of decarbonisation, which they are failing at, they are, however, succeeding at deindustrialisation?
Gentleman for the intervention, and he makes an important point about the overall policies of the government in relation to net zero. I go on to say that Adam Wilson from Falcon Petroleum wrote to me what they describe as, and I quote, the unsatisfactory experience we have had with the bidding process with FTI. We own and operate 4 refineries in Europe and the Middle East. With advancement of technology, we have been able to go carbon neutral to all our refineries. We had pledged to turn Lindsey Oil carbon neutral within 2 years if we had successfully purchased it. I could give other examples, Madam Deputy Speaker, but what I have said so far makes it clear that the approaches to FDI from consortia that wish to purchase the whole business and continue production have been rebuffed. The potential investors, the employees and all of those affected have a right to know. The government has chosen not to get involved. Yes, they've offered a training guarantee, which is helpful, but much more is required. As suggested by the Minister last week at a meeting that I and the member for Great Grimsby had, he has suggested that the Minister for Investment, the Noble Lord Stockwood of Great Grimsby, the local authorities and other agencies could provide investment in the area, and that we sit round the table and with at an early opportunity. We need better transport connections and early decisions from government on the many proposals in their in-tray that could boost the Humber region economy. To sum up, Madam Deputy Speaker, why didn't the government act to ensure production continued and engage more fully in the process to achieve that? And could he give a date as to when the Minister and Lord Stockwood will visit the area and put in place a structure that helps us to recover the local economy? Could he also give details how many jobs will be saved by the P66 deal? The receiver's job is to ensure the best deal for creditors. Can he explain why a sale of assets rather than the business better achieves this? And as the government are one of the creditors, how much are they owed? And how much will P66 return to the Treasury? I look forward to the Minister's replies.
Well said. Very good. Yeah.
Melanie on.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for securing this debate and for being very gracious with his time. For workers and their families across the Humber, the last 6 months have been bruising, to say the least. People who've spent their working lives keeping a complex site safe, compliant and productive have faced prolonged uncertainty, and they've done so with dignity and professionalism. And I want to put on record my support for them and give assurances that they are always at the forefront of my mind when pushing for clarity in this House. It is important that accountability still matters on who is ultimately at fault for the collapse of the refinery. In September last year, the High Court froze around £150 million worth of assets belonging to the former owner of the refinery, Winston Susapilli, also known as Sanjeev Kumar. For workers and communities who've paid the price for the reckless financial mismanagement of Mr Susapilli, this action will be welcomed. But what happens to those assets? How long will they be frozen? Can they be used to help support the site and develop the site, or support some of the intervention measures that the government has discussed? There are also concerns, and the Honourable Gentleman has detailed them very, very clearly, about the process of the official receiver, and I think that there is some justification here. The whole process has been incredibly opaque, very difficult to engage in communications under legal frameworks that barred government and elected representatives from having any kind of input. So the targets that the official receiver was working to have not been clear at all. We are in the dark, as are the workers, and that has caused even more uncertainty and distress for those people. Is this really the best outcome for the site? I am encouraged by Phillips 66 taking on the site, but it cannot be ignored that there has been ministerial correspondence that says that there were credible bids. We've heard the numbers, they are disputed. Is it 4? Is it 7? Is it just 1? Is it actually none? But we do not know, because we cannot get any answers on that. The shift in position from the government now says that now there were no credible bids, or certainly none that had any immediate refining capacity or that could run the site as a going concern, opening the books on the matrix that the official receiver used and how they reached their decision, understanding that there may well be commercial interest, but to do it under a Chatham House scheme, at least then that elected representatives are able to make an assessment on behalf of their constituents, surely is something that the government could do. I give way to the Honourable Gentleman, and I will give way.
Grateful to the Honourable Lady. She talks about the need for us to be able to scrutinise that which was deemed a credible bid. Would she like to ask the Minister about whether or not the government will be applying commercial in confidence rules to the scrutiny of that to cover their tracks over what was and what wasn't a credible bid?
I disagree with that, but I would urge the government to be prepared to open some of the process that happened. I understand that there will be commercial sensitivity, and I hope that there can be a route found to enable us to be able to scrutinise the information that is available. I give way.
Thank you. We've heard from my honourable friend that there are bidders, and they think that theirs is a credible bid. So I think we are entitled to demand from the government that we don't want just asset stripping going on here. It's not just the local community, it's a vital national resource. And the House of Commons needs to be informed, and big time.
And I would also say we have been given trusted privilege to secure information and secure documents as a whole House in the past. All of us were required to go to a room to sign in, to read documents when it came to exiting the European Union, for example. So there are ways and means by which we can do these things, and some trust in the elected representatives, not least because so much of the information that came from the companies was made available to local representatives anyway, because they emailed the details to us. So it would be very interesting to understand why the official receivers deemed them to not be credible. But I will move forward because decisions have already been made, and it seems challenging, to say the least, that we would be kind of going backwards in this. But the written statement of 22nd of July delivered by the Minister for Energy confirmed two important commitments for those directly employed at Lindsey: a package guaranteeing jobs until under a redundancy scheme that will end in March. So that's another 240 people who will be made redundant at the end of March. and a package guaranteeing jobs and pay, and a training guarantee as well. There have been concerns over that training guarantee, and I would ask the ministers to look more closely at that as we move forward.
Minister Martin McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'll just begin by thanking the Honourable Member for Brigg and Immingham for securing this debate. And I know that he and other Honourable Members, including my Honourable friend, the Member for Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes, have been engaging closely with the Minister for Energy on this issue. And I know that he stands ready to continue to engage with them around the detail of this issue. Let me start with Prax Lindsey Oil Refinery, which is what we are debating this evening, which entered, as we know, insolvency on the 30th of June 2025 due to the untenable position in which the owners left the refinery, which gave government very little time to act. And I know how difficult this has been for workers, for their families and for the local community. The insolvency process at the refinery is led by the court-appointed official receiver, who must act independently in accordance with his statutory duties. And since the insolvency, we've worked with the official receiver to protect workers and ensure the safety of the site and the security of fuel supplies. This has allowed time for bidders to express an interest in the site and in its assets. Now, after a thorough process to identify a buyer for the site, the official receiver has now determined that Phillips 66 is the most credible bidder and can provide a viable future for this site. And I'm glad to say, as a result, that the sale is expected to complete in the first half of 2026. Phillips 66, as many honourable members will be aware, is an experienced and credible operator of its Humber refinery next door to Lindsey, and it already supplies fuel to the region and has consistently turned a profit in recent years. And this sale allows Phillips 66 to quickly expand operations at its Humber refinery. The company has decided not to restart standalone refinery operations at Lindsey due to the limitations of its scale, facilities and capabilities. Evaluations, this is their words, not mine, evaluations have shown that the refinery is not viable in its current form. And while disappointing, this is not totally unexpected given the long history of problems with the business. We understand that the previous owners, Total, were seeking to sell Lindsey for several years and sold it to Prax for a nominal amount. And since Prax's acquisition in 2021, the refinery has recorded around £75 million of losses. In addition, following a thorough assessment of offers, the official receiver confirmed that none were credibly put forward that would see a return to refining operations in the next few years. Phillips 66 plans to integrate key assets into its Humber refinery operations, expanding its ability to supply fuel to UK customers from the Humber refinery. This is positive news for boosting domestic energy security, securing jobs, including hundreds of new construction jobs over the next 5 years, and creating future growth opportunities for renewable and traditional fuels. That all being said, I do recognise, and ministers in the department recognise, that this is a very worrying time for workers. And I'm glad to report that the remaining 250 directly employed workers are guaranteed employment until the end of March, though I know that will be cold comfort for many of them. Phillips 66 will provide further information on the number of jobs that will be retained as they move towards completion of the sale in the coming months. And I know my honourable friend, the Minister for Energy, has asked Phillips 66 for clarity as soon as possible and to retain as many of these jobs as possible. The Government will continue to support the 124 workers affected by the redundancy that happened last October. And as my honourable friend has alluded to, this includes, of course,
giving way. The bottom line is that P66 are mothballing this site. They're using certain bits of it in order to use those parts rather than invest in their own site. Will the Minister agree to allow a full, open, transparent process to look at the bids, the alternative bids that have come in that would have kept this site open, would have kept many more jobs and retained a strategic national asset?
Deputy Speaker, the member will know that discussions like these are commercially confidential, and the official receiver has undertaken an independent process to come to the decision that he has come to. As I was saying a moment ago, as my honourable friend alluded to during the debate, the support for the 124 workers affected by redundancy last October includes the training guarantee to ensure they have the skills they need and are supported to find long-term jobs, which goes above and beyond the usual level of support offered in insolvency situations. And I'm pleased to confirm that the majority of them, have already taken up this offer, but I'd be pleased, and my honourable friend, the Minister for Energy, would be pleased to discuss any issues that she may see emerging in that training guarantee. I believe that the agreement with Phillips 66 marks the next step in securing an industrial future for the site and the workers who are badly let down by their former owners. The circumstances surrounding the insolvency as a whole are deeply concerning, and that is why the Energy Secretary immediately demanded that the Insolvency Service launch an investigation into their conduct and the circumstances surrounding insolvency, which is ongoing. More broadly, Madam Deputy Speaker, just to address the issues in the broader UK oil refining sector for a moment, the UK's refineries continue to play a vital role in maintaining reliable supplies of essential fuels that keep transport moving, industry operating and support households with their day-to-day lives, and we appreciate their contribution goes far beyond fuel alone. They are anchors for local economies, providing well-paid, skilled jobs and supporting a wide web of supply chains, from chemicals to plastics to advanced manufacturing. These facilities also enable the production of specialist materials that many of our industries rely on. For example, the Humber Refinery produces the UK's only anode-grade petroleum coke used in electric vehicle technology, while Foley's output of specialised rubber helped ensure vaccine vials could be produced securely during the pandemic. And crucially, our refineries are also adapting for the future. They are investing in modernisation, low-carbon fuels and technologies such as carbon capture, all essential to the UK's transition to net zero, and the Humber region will have a major role to play in this over the coming years. While overall fuel demand is expected to shift over time, sectors like aviation, maritime and heavy industry will continue to depend on refined products well into the future, and we want to preserve our refining sector and keep it competitive. And as set out in the autumn budget, we are now reviewing, of course.
Melanie, thank the Minister for giving way on that point of keeping UK oil refineries competitive. What is the position of the government, and what will they be going forward with at the summit in May with the EU when it comes to discussing ETS?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I will commit to writing to the Honourable Member on that point, on both CBAM and the ETS, as a follow-up to this debate. As I was saying, we want to preserve our refining sector and keep it competitive, and as set out in the autumn budget, we are now reviewing critical policies to address the challenges that the sector faces. Let me briefly, in the time remaining, take you through the steps we've already taken to help the downstream sector adapt and stay competitive. Firstly, through the Renewable Transport Fuel Obligation and the new Sustainable Aviation Fuel Mandate, we are backing the production and use of cleaner fuels. The Humber Refinery is already delivering sustainable aviation fuels at scale, and refineries at Foley and Stanlow are benefiting from government support through the Advanced Fuels Fund to bring next-generation fuels to market, while we are also working to de-risk investment in SAF production through the Revenue Certainty Mechanism. And secondly, we're working closely with industry on major decarbonisation efforts, including carbon capture and hydrogen projects within industrial clusters such as Viking and HyNet, which will be central to keeping UK manufacturing competitive as global markets tighten emission standards. The UK ETS Authority's decision to maintain current benchmarks for the 2027 scheme year provides the consistency and breathing room that energy-intensive industries need to plan investments and manage costs effectively. And at the autumn budget, we committed to assess the feasibility of including refined products in the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. This is a key priority for industry and would help ensure UK refineries are not undercut by imports produced to lower environmental standards. Collectively, these measures signal our determination to create the conditions for continued investment, innovation and long-term competitiveness as we transition to a low-carbon economy. And looking ahead, the Government is deepening its engagement with the sector to ensure a smooth and secure transition in the coming years. And it's important to note that Minister Shanks led the first ministerial roundtable.
He's not Minister Shanks. We don't refer to our colleagues by their name. Martin McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for reprimanding me there. My honourable friend, the Minister for Energy, as referred to before, led the first ministerial roundtable for more than a decade with the sector and will continue to engage with the industry. In closing, let me be clear, we recognise the importance of the Lindsey Oil Refinery and the Lindsey site to the local community and national economy. The integration of these assets into the Humber refinery will boost energy security and support high-quality employment locally. The UK refining sector matters, and that is why this government is acting, from supporting low-carbon fuel production and deploying carbon capture and hydrogen to launching a call for evidence that will shape our long-term strategy. We will work with industry, with devolved governments and with communities to deliver a managed transition.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Order, order.